Hi, I'm Amanda Morrell with interest.co.nz, and I'm here with a double-shot interview with Carmel Fisher, Managing Director of Fisher Funds. It's one of the 30-odd KiwiSaver providers out there. So there's been lots of interesting news with KiwiSaver lately. Some exciting news for you today, Carmel. Officially, you will be assuming Hullich's old KiwiSaver funds. Is that correct?
That's right.
So tell us, what are the implications of that? Because there's about 100,000 members that are now going to be joining your fold.
That's right.
What implications are there for KiwiSavers in your fund?
The implications for Fisher Funds is that we have another $200 million to manage. We have, as you say, another 100,000 clients on top of our existing 30,000 KiwiSaver members. So it's a big increase in membership. But what does it mean? I suppose longer term it means that we can have sufficient scale so that hopefully we can reduce costs right across the whole of our KiwiSaver membership base. So hopefully our existing members will benefit just as much as the Hullich members do.
Yeah.
With scale, with 100,000 members, we'll pay less for trustees' fees, we'll pay less for printing, for all sorts of things actually. Now on the flip side, it does mean that we've got extra work because just the volume of calls and so on is huge compared to what we've had in the past. So we've brought on 6 people from Hullich, and they will start with us this week. And so hopefully they'll help to manage that. So it's a change, but it's certainly a manageable change for us.
Okay. There's also been another development with your business. You've teamed up with Mike Perro Mortgage Brokers, and they have a pretty wide presence across the country. So what implications does that have for your business?
Well, look, Mike Perot used to promote the Hullich KiwiSaver scheme, and they withdrew that at the end of last year, and then they talked to a number of providers and sought an alternative, and we won that process. So yes, so actually the Mike Perot brokers are being trained as we speak, and they've been trained all about Fisher Funds KiwiSaver, and so it just means that for the Mike Perot brokers, when they're talking to clients about getting a mortgage, then they can also talk about other financial or other investment decisions as well, including KiwiSaver. And when they talk about KiwiSaver, they'll be talking about Fisher Funds scheme. So I suppose for us, it's a continuation of what we've achieved with Hullich, and that with the Hullich acquisition, we also inherit 30 distributors who are based all around the country who can promote Fisher Funds KiwiSaver to people in shopping malls, talking to people directly. And it's the same with Mike Perot. We've got mortgage brokers who'll be going to people's homes and talking mortgages and talking KiwiSaver. We don't currently have that at Fisher Funds. We have an office on the North Shore, and yes, we do a lot online, we do a lot with email and letters and so on. But for a lot of people, they need that face-to-face meeting before they'll sign up for KiwiSaver. They need to be able to ask questions of somebody that they can trust. Okay. And so that's what we've achieved through Mike Perot and also with Hullich.
Okay. Under the new regulatory scheme, we've got these multi-layer financial advisors, these AFAs and the registered advisors. So I understand that it's the registered advisors. Is it through Mike Perot that's the registered advisor who will be selling the keys?
Yes.
So what kind of or level of expertise can you expect from that kind of person? How well positioned are they to advise you about which fund might be appropriate for you given your age and your risk tolerance and all that?
Well, look, it's been interesting because I know that if we talk about Hullich and Mike Perot, because with Hullich we know that they were criticised, a year or two ago for door-to-door selling and for selling to inappropriate people and all this sort of stuff. So having been reviewed by the Securities Commission, they went through and they reviewed all of their training material, all their written documentation, and so now I would argue that the Hullich salespeople are among the best in the industry because having got it wrong a couple of years ago, they've now, the pendulum swung almost the other way, and so they only sell KiwiSaver. So they know a whole lot about KiwiSaver, whereas actually if you speak to some generalists who know a little bit about KiwiSaver, a little bit about managed funds, a little bit about insurance, they might not know as much as the Hullich people who are focused entirely on KiwiSaver. So they can answer any questions about Fisher Funds KiwiSaver, about what fund is best for you, whether you need conservative or growth or balanced exposure, and so on. And it's the same with Mike Perot advisors. So as I said, the training's going on right now, and so they will be told everything there is to know to enable them to talk to anybody in depth about Fisher Funds KiwiSaver, but
Okay.
they can't talk about managed funds and they can't talk about insurance and other things.
Okay.
Because they're not authorised to do that.
Okay. All right. It's important to know that there's a distinguishment between the two levels of advisors out there.
Although, having said that, some of the advisors that we have through, or some of the representatives that we have through Hewlett, are training to become authorised financial advisors. So come July, there may be some of them who are authorised to actually talk about broader investments rather than just KiwiSaver.
Okay, well, that's good to know. There is, now that KiwiSaver has reached this critical mass, so it's 1.7 million, it's totally exceeded Treasury's own predictions about its success. People are starting to ask a lot of questions, and the big question on everybody's mind now is what's going to happen in the budget. How much are these member tax credits going to go, and will KiwiSaver still be a good investment for people? What's your projection about what's going to happen there?
Yeah, look, I don't know either, although I think that John Key has tried to be as clear as he possibly could be, and so there should be no surprises in the budget. So I think there's definitely going to be a reduction in the member tax credits, and some are suggesting they'll be halved. That's still okay, $500 every year. That's tax effective, and it's money you wouldn't otherwise have had, and that compounds every year. Like it's worth having, especially given that we're going to keep the $1,000 up front as well. So you get your $1,000, and even if it's reduced to $500 a year, it's still most definitely worth having. So I'm not expecting any more tinkering. What I'm hoping for is that the reduction in terms of the member tax credits for KiwiSaver might be offset or might be matched by other tax initiatives to encourage saving, because John Key and Bill English have both stressed the importance of New Zealanders saving long term. So on one breath they say that, next breath they take something away from KiwiSaver. They have to reintroduce something if they're true to their word. I guess the difference might be that they might implement the KiwiSaver change now, and then other tax initiatives might be introduced, next year or the year after. But I guess what I'm really looking for in the budget is the rhetoric. Is the rhetoric to say we are absolutely committed to long-term savings. We don't want to muck around with KiwiSaver. We've regretted doing it, and the only reason we've done it is that we've had all these unusual circumstances with the earthquake and finance companies and so on. But we are committed to long-term savings because we know as a country we need to do that. That's what I'm more interested in hearing rather than just a little. Because really the changes are tinkering. It's not. They haven't said we're going to remove KiwiSaver altogether, and that's quite important.
Yeah, I think one of the other messages that's going to come across is that individuals are going to have to do more to save for their own retirement futures.
Yes.
Government can't possibly sustain that. So, there's a self-interest in people taking a closer look at their KiwiSaver, finding out where it's going, how much it's increased, which brings me to the next question about performance. There's been some criticism about the performance benchmark tables that are out there, that the way they're calculated, the lack of consistency in the reporting requirements among providers. So how meaningful are those benchmarks, and what can be read into them when you get the latest quarterly result?
Yeah, look, first of all, I think it's fantastic that people are taking a closer look at KiwiSaver. I must admit, in the first year, I thought all these people just allowed themselves to be put into default schemes, and they don't even know who their provider was. And I'm thinking, gosh, this is your long-term savings. You really should take more of an interest. So it's fantastic that those questions are being asked. In terms of how much we can trust the performance tables, to be honest, I've been in the industry for 20-odd years, and I've always just assumed that every fund manager calculated performance in the same way, and so those tables were reliable, and you could trust them. So now there's been talk that various fund managers calculate performance differently, and so now there's a move towards a standardisation, which is going to be fantastic. I wouldn't not invest because, oh gosh, I can't trust anything. There's got to be a starting point, and even if fund managers have a slight variation in the way they calculate performance, it will only be at the margin, because you can't just make up returns, if you know what I mean. If you've got a KiwiSaver scheme that started at $1, and at the end of the month it's $1.10, then your performance is 10%. End of. So you can't fudge that any other way. And providers have their unit price calculated by an external party. We use trustees executors who have nothing to do with Fisher Funds, so they calculate the unit price. So if they say it's $1.10 at the end of the month, an investor should be able to have reasonable confidence that it is $1.10. Where there's some uncertainty or less clarity, I guess, is in how much of the fees are disclosed. So sometimes fund managers will lump together the trustees fee, the admin fee, the fee for printing, or the cost of printing the investment statements or whatever. It's those things that aren't particularly clear. Whereas generally speaking, the management fee is quite clear, and
Right.
certainly clear in the investment statement.
Yeah.
The management fee is by far the largest fee.
Yeah.
So if you know that your manager is charging you 1% per annum, but you don't know whether the additional fees are 0.3% or 0.2%,
Yeah.
0.1%, that's not really a major. I mean, it's frustrating, and it's going to be sorted,
Yeah.
but that's not the major decision for an investor. You know, really, the investors should be more concerned to know that I want to be paying 1% per annum or around 1% per annum. I don't want to be paying 2.5% per annum,
Yeah.
because 1% is sort of like the industry norm. They're the sort of questions that people should be asking.
Okay, but there are some providers rather that are charging performance fees as well. Is that built into the management fee, or how much transparency is there around that sort of high water mark?
Yes, look, we charge a performance fee as well, and that has to be disclosed in the investment statement. So everybody, all the members in our scheme know that they pay a performance fee once we've beaten our performance benchmark.
Yeah.
We have a high watermark, and I think most managers who have a performance fee also have a high watermark. And a high watermark just says you don't get paid another performance fee until you at least achieve the level, the performance that where you last earned your performance fee. So let's say we go from $1 to $1.10, we earn a performance fee.
Yeah.
If our funds then fell down to $1.05, and then we lift it again to $1.10, we don't get paid for that recovery from $1.05 to $1.10. We only get paid once we perform above the $1.10.
Okay.
So you can't get paid twice for performance, is essentially what a high watermark protects you against.
And that's on an annual basis? Or?
That's on an annual basis. Well, you don't, but generally speaking, you don't get paid, you don't earn enough to earn a performance fee every year. I mean, we've had a performance fee in our other funds for the last, 10 years.
Okay.
And typically we earn a performance fee in every third or fourth year.
Right.
Because a performance fee is supposed to pay you for better than average performance. Your management fee pays you to do the job, and then the performance fee is a reward for you for achieving better than expected performance.
Okay, it might be confusing for a lot of people when they're trying to, weigh that up in the whole grand scheme of things. But one of the questions that has also been put to us is, how well does KiwiSaver do compared to other managed funds out there, either in New Zealand or compared to some of the super funds in Australia? It's still early days, but what indication are we seeing from KiwiSaver here relative to?
I have to say that the average returns from KiwiSaver funds have been really good. In some ways, it was quite. I think the timing of the launch of KiwiSaver was pretty good because it was near the bottom of the global financial crisis, and so initially investors had these negative returns for the first few months, and they were thinking, why have I signed up for KiwiSaver? But then they had the recovery through 2009, 2010, and so they've actually had some great returns. In terms of how KiwiSaver funds have performed versus other managed funds, generally speaking, they should be fairly similar. I mean, the investments that we make within our KiwiSaver scheme are exactly the same investments that we make within our other funds. So the New Zealand component of our KiwiSaver scheme will perform exactly the same as our New Zealand Growth Fund. So they should be within cooey of each other.
Okay.
Of course, there are some KiwiSaver providers who never had managed funds before KiwiSaver, so you don't know, so that you can't do that comparison. But generally speaking, they should be broadly consistent.
Okay. For somebody who's trying to weigh up, though, what's the real value in KiwiSaver? What would be the advantage of being in a KiwiSaver as opposed to another managed fund at this point right now?
Yeah, look, there's free money in KiwiSaver, and there's not free money in traditional managed funds. Yeah. Even if with the budget there's a reduction in the member tax credits, there are still going to be some member tax credits. So there's still some money coming into your account every year from the government that you wouldn't otherwise have had. So even if it's $500, that's $500, 100% return on $500, which you wouldn't otherwise have had. There's $1,000 up front, which is worth having because over time it compounds and it will make a difference. There's also the employer contribution, and it's likely that the budget will move employer contributions up to 4% or even higher over time. So that's great. It's somebody else is paying to help you save.
Right.
You don't have that in any other managed fund, so that's a real advantage in KiwiSaver. Now, yes, there's a disadvantage to match that because with KiwiSaver you're locked in until you're age 65, whereas with managed funds you can pull your money out whenever you like.
Right.
But some would argue, and I would, that it's important to have some locked-in money because actually, I was going to say Kiwis, but it's just human nature. We all get tempted when our circumstances change or we see something else we want to buy. It's very easy to dip into your savings account and say, oh, look, I'll top that up later. We don't have that luxury. We need to actually lock in our savings because the government can't afford to keep us in the retirement lifestyle we'd like.
Long term, there's some insecurity, I think, too, about KiwiSaver, that there could be future tinkering and a change in government could bring more changes, and that this got, I think, people a little bit apprehensive. What's your view on the long term future of KiwiSaver?
Yeah, look, I'm encouraged by the fact that the Labor government introduced it, and National to date have supported KiwiSaver. So that's why I am interested in the rhetoric around the budget tomorrow. I want to hear National say we are committed to long-term savings. Now, they might be tempted, I hope not, but they might be tempted to do some more tinkering in the budget. But look, I think that the long-term future of KiwiSaver, or a form of KiwiSaver, is assured, simply because we need it, and both parties, both Labor and National, know that we need to have a form of long-term savings. There is a possibility that KiwiSaver will become compulsory, and I'm all for that as well. You'd expect me to be as a KiwiSaver provider, but I actually think it's good for the country, because if you just glance at what's happened in Australia, that compulsion, people being forced to save, they didn't like it initially, but now Australians are willingly giving up 12% of their income to put into their retirement savings account. And why are they doing that? It's because over a number of years they've seen their savings balance grow, and it makes them feel wealthy. And so when you feel wealthy, you just behave differently. And that's what I think we need in New Zealand. And it's been wonderful in the first 3 years of KiwiSaver to see people's KiwiSaver balances grow quite significantly. So there are people who, when they first signed up for KiwiSaver, thought, oh, it's $1,000 a year, it's not very much. Now they're sitting on balances of $20,000 or $30,000. When you know you've got $20,000 or $30,000 sitting there with your name on it that the government can't touch, it just makes you behave differently, and I think that's good for the country.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Carmel, for joining us. I'm Amanda Morrell with Interest.co, and this has been another one of our double shot interviews.